To SHIBATA or not to SHIBATA? That is the question. Hi, I'm Bob, and you, my friends, are back in the United States of Analog. I'm glad you're here. Today we're going to have more turntable fun. A short little video about a little cartridge I found that you might find interesting. First of all, let me say it's kind of a mid-level, mid-priced cartridge. It's going to be in the moving magnet class. That's usually where I lean. And it's from a company called Audio-Technica, and more on that in just a second. First of all, let me just tell you what we try to do here. We try to have fun with audio. We try not to get too technical. We're music first, we're value second, and we're spec sheets third. If that makes any sense. Now that may not appeal to everybody, but if that kind of philosophy appeals to you, then go ahead and hit that like button right now and subscribe. Because hey, we're gonna hit 30,000 subs, I think tomorrow. That's right, tomorrow or Saturday, we're gonna hit it. Thank you very much for your support. Yeah, we don't take audio super seriously here. You know, in the audio world, some of these channels can be kind of dry, you know? Where here in the United States of Analog, I think we're just a little bit wetter. That's not exactly how I wanted that to come out, but that's the way it came out. So, you know what? We'll keep it in the edit. Now, I love turntables. You know that. I lean more toward turntables that are in that $300 to $1,000, $1,200 range. That's my wheelhouse. It's probably your wheelhouse if you're watching. Again, I classify turntables four ways. You got the beginner, entry level, the enthusiast turntable, the more professional turntables, then what I call the sky's the limit, which are the more expensive, sometimes even exotic turntables. But I think here in the United States of Analog, most of us are in that enthusiast to pro level, and that's where I like to hang. We're talking about cartridges today. Audio-Technica. Which one? Well, where's the box? Because I don't want to get it wrong. The VM750xSH SHIBATA Stylus moving magnet cartridge at around $369 retail. Now I know that's a lot for some people whose turntables may not have even cost that much, but this cartridge is for turntables, I think, between about $500 to $1,000. People looking to upgrade. Now, one of the problems sometimes when buying a turntable is the fact that most of them ship with a cartridge installed, and you're kind of stuck with that, at least in the beginning. I wish more turntables didn't have the cartridge installed so they could bring the price down and then you could select your own cartridge, your own stylus profile. I think that's a better way to go, but I understand why companies do that. For a lot of people that are convenience leaning, it's a good thing. They don't have to worry about mounting it. They don't have to worry about calibrating it, adjusting it, you know, dialing it in. But when you get a little further into this sport, you're going to want to have more control of the situation and choose the cartridge and the stylus profile of your liking. Now, I've never owned a cartridge with a SHIBATA stylus, but what got me thinking about it is the Michel Technodeck turntable I have upstairs. I feel like the cartridge I had on it wasn't up to the task. It didn't live up to the high standards that the Technodeck set. So I thought, you know what, this is a good excuse to try SHIBATA. I've always wanted to try it. And I always start with Audio-Technica. Let's talk about Audio-Technica as a company first before we get into whether you should SHIBATA or not SHIBATA. Audio-Technica was started in Japan in around 1962, and their first product was a cartridge, an AT1. The company was founded by Hideo Matsushita, and they started out making affordable products for the Japanese market. First making cartridges, then expanding into microphones, headphones, other pro gear, and even now turntables. You'll find Audio-Technica in homes, studios, stadiums, all around the world. Now here's 5 things I love about Audio-Technica. First of all, they're a trusted, proven company. They've been around for decades. Number 2, their products are easily accessible. If you want a new cartridge, all you have to do is go on Amazon and have one delivered the same day or the next day, or order from any number of great audio companies. Number 3, they always provide good value. Number 4, they have a huge selection, a huge catalog of products in all of the categories I've already mentioned. And number 5, most times I find their performance to be very good when set up properly. Now, we're not going to talk too much about setup in this video, but it's something that can really affect the sound of your cartridge. Now, speaking of sound, you know, the turntable has a lot of different components that can affect the way your music is going to sound. But I think only the stylus and the cartridge really give your turntable that sound profile, that specific sound profile. In other words, yeah, you could get an expensive turntable with carbon fiber tone arms and expensive bearings, isolation feet and all that. It's all gonna benefit the sound, but more in the noise department. In other words, you know, really high quality components and motors and bearings and tone arms and all that will help lower the noise floor perhaps, and better motors will have more precise speed control. But the cartridge and the stylus, that's going to determine the sound characteristics of your turntable, the sound profile. Is it going to be bright and detailed? Is it going to be boring and dull with no sound stage? That's what the cartridge brings to the table. It brings the soul to your turntable, if that makes any sense. These are my words and my opinions only. Please put it in the comments if you think I've got it wrong or you think I've got it right. But most of the time when I'm evaluating a turntable, it's the cartridge that sets the tone, literally. Now, I've had all kinds of cartridges in my audio journey. I've had conical and elliptical, microline, and, you know, just about everything, but never a SHIBATA. What is a SHIBATA? The SHIBATA is a line contact stylus. In other words, you're gonna get a lot more of that needle surface into your grooves, making contact with those groove walls. And that can mean, among other things, more detail extracted from your recordings. And a lot of us want that. Most of us want the most amount of detail that we can get without the sound being kind of grating and annoying. And that can happen sometimes. Sometimes you can get too much sibilance, or you can kind of overload on the detail and lose a little bit of that soul that I talked about. The SHIBATA profile was originally developed by JVC in the 1970s for quadraphonic sound. That was the original surround sound back in the day. 4-channel sound could be extracted from just regular vinyl records with a quadraphonic stylus. Yeah, its elongated shape makes more contact with the walls, each wall of the groove. In most cases, it provides exceptional detail retrieval, more detailed highs, low record wear because that weight coming down on the record is more spread out, I guess you would say. There's probably a more technical way to explain that. And besides that detail, the SHIBATA may pull out more subtle details in your recording, more air, more space, more of those details that some of us audiophiles want to hear. You want to hear Muddy Waters' chair squeak when he leans back during the recording. You want to hear Bob Dylan's vest buttons banging against his acoustic guitar. You may hear that with a SHIBATA stylus. What we're talking about today is the Audio-Technica VM750X SHIBATA, the SH. Not to be confused with the non-VMX, the VM SHIBATA, which is still available. Also good performance, but a different mounting system. One of the things I really love about the VMX line is the threaded inserts at the top of the cartridge, making this thing very easy to mount on a head shell. Again, this cartridge is about $369, and if for whatever reason you end up not liking the SHIBATA down the road, this will accept 6 other styli in the line. And that's pretty cool. Let's say you get down the line with the SHIBATA and you feel like maybe you're picking up not only a lot of detail, but you're also picking up more surface noise. You might want to backtrack a step and go with a microline stylus at an additional cost. But then you'll always have the SHIBATA stylus, you know, for a backup. And the 750 has a very cool colorway, gold, and I'll call it hot cocoa brown. That's the best I can describe it, a very warm brown on the Stylus assembly. Oh, and by the way, the Stylus has a different number should you need to reorder another one. Now, everything I've said about the SHIBATA Stylus I have found to be true in the couple months that I've been listening to this on the Michelle Techno deck. I am getting a lot more detail and a lot more sound retrieval from this than even the micro line that I have on my Mobile Fidelity cartridge and my VM750ML. I'm getting more variety in sound. In other words, I'm getting very good lows, but I'm also getting very good highs that never really get to that unsettling, ear-crushing, headache-inducing sound. None of that with the 750xSH. I find the sound to be pleasing, I find it to be balanced, and it's one of those products that when you start using it, if you haven't got to this level of cartridge before, which I feel like is just under kind of the moving coil level, you're going to want to play every record in your collection because you feel like you're hearing it for the first time. You're getting the subtle details. You're extracting more from the grooves. And I really did not notice any increase in the noise floor, pops and clicks, or anything like that. Quite the contrary. This looks great. It tracks great. It sounds great. Now, what are some of the downsides? Well, again, for some people, you may feel like it's also extracting more noise. And maybe it's the level of turntable I'm at with the type of tone arms I have and bearings and motors and things like that, where it's really not an issue. The other downside is, for some, this will be more expensive and more than they want to spend. In many cases, this would be the same price as their turntable. And the third thing is that this cartridge is a little more finicky to set up. You're going to want to have some experience in setting up and aligning a cartridge and setting up a turntable to use this SHIBATA and get the most out of it. Now, I don't think you have to be perfect. I don't think you have to get a microscope out, but you should be proficient using a vertical tracking force scale, knowing how to set vertical tracking angle, and maybe even have that adjustment capability on the turntable you're going to install this on. Azimuth is a little bit beyond my skill set, but I think it would behoove you to learn how to use a protractor when installing a cartridge like this to make sure that that SHIBATA shaped stylus is just perfectly in the middle of that groove. And if you don't want to do any of that, well, you could still get a cartridge like this. You may not get the absolute most out of it, but you will certainly get some benefits. I'm going to do another video in a few months and let you know whether I find this to be superior to the Microline. One thing you might want to consider if you have a less expensive turntable and you don't want to spend as much money but you want to try SHIBATA is to try the AT VM750SH cartridge. And if you already have a VM95 cartridge, you can just get the SHIBATA Stylus and upgrade that cartridge. So lots of options here, lots of fun, lots of ways to get different sound, different flavors out of your system, and you can do that with a new cartridge. You can also get more out of your system by watching one more of my videos. Hopefully you've got this far into the video, and if you have, you might consider subscribing right here, and then after that, click on a video that's going to pop up right here any second. The geniuses at YouTube have already decided this is the video they want you to watch next. It could be about a turntable, an amp, a streamer, maybe some bookshelf speakers. I don't know. It's not for me to decide. I hope you decide to come back to the United States of Analog. We'll see you next time. Cheers.